Hey everyone, it's Brandon Lee, host of the podcast Escaping Rock Bottom. I will tell you this, and I say this all the time, I'm excited to have a guest, but I'm really excited to have this guest just because of personal ties as well. But Sonja Grace is known around the world as a mystic healer. She is also a medicine woman on the Hopi Reservation here in Arizona. Sonja came down to the valley to have a good conversation with me today, and thank you for doing this episode with me.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, this is really exciting because, and I do want to make this very clear that to my listeners and my followers, I speak of my shaman on every episode that I talk about because my shaman and my healer has been a huge role of me healing from my childhood trauma. I do want to let people know my shaman is Toby Quinn, and this is Sonja Grace. So Sonja is not currently my shaman or my medicine healer, but I find but people ask me all the time, and Brandon, how do we get a hold of Toby, or how do we get a hold of a shaman? And you know what that tells me, Sonja, is that people are desperate. People have tried medications. They've tried every way of other healing, talk therapy and stuff, and it hasn't worked for them to the point where they're like, give me your shaman's number.
Well, it's like my practice. 40% of my clients are psychologists. What does that tell you? Right? I mean, I'm working in energy. I'm working as a healer, but I'm doing really deep processing work with people. So I've had clients say to me numerous times, I just got done in one session with you more than I've done in 15 years of therapy.
It's because, I tell people this all the time, that is talk therapy. Talk therapy is all frontal lobe. That's all right here, right? And we can trick our minds into thinking and believing things, but we need a modality in order to get us past the frontal lobe into the lower part of our brains where those traumatic memories are stored. And more importantly, that energy still lives in the lower part of our spines. It still lives within our bodies. And we have to use somebody like a shaman in order to get past that frontal lobe and to go back and reprocess that trauma so that we're currently not triggered. I first want people to get to know you. Sure. First off, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Portland, Oregon. I was raised on a farm. I was born with all of my gifts. Seriously, came into the world this way. I can see, hear, feel, smell, and weirdly taste everything in the spirit realm. So since my earliest memory at 2, I was seeing my guides who are high angelic beings. I was seeing spirits walk through the house. I was doing healing work on the family pets. I was hardwired in this way. So there was only markers through my life of not being able to cope, having way too much input, too much stuff coming in, growing up in the 60s and 70s and sort of getting influenced by drugs, sex, and rock and roll and all that comes with that time period. And really trying to escape a very difficult experience of seeing all this stuff in the spirit realm and having no teachers around me to help me. I mean, my parents were hardworking people and had 4 kids and a farm, and they were only, 24, 23 years old. I mean,
What was your parents' reaction when you first told them that you were seeing? I mean, I have to imagine as a child, right? And you're seeing these things, you're feeling these things, you're smelling and you're tasting these things. Had to be very fearful. I mean, I would assume maybe a little frightening, maybe what is going on, that you had to have said something to your parents.
Sure,
right?
I did.
What was their reaction when you said this?
Thank God my parents were artists as well as my father was a builder, but my mom was a painter. And of course, she put art materials in my hands as early as possible. So I grew up painting, but she also put me in ballet class at 5. Because what that did for me was that movement helped me to integrate what was happening. And as I grew up, I actually trained as a classical ballerina, and I danced professionally for about 10 years. And what that did for me is it taught me a different relationship with time and space. So I'm actually in the work that I do, because I have clients all over the world, Australia, Singapore, Europe, everywhere. I'm able to defy time and space and put myself in front of them and actually do the healing work that one might experience in person. So I'm going in and working on the heart and the liver, the pancreas, and that person's right there in front of me. That's why dance was so good. And any movement is good for sensitive people because it teaches you that you don't have to be stuck in that moment of physicality.
So I want to talk about, because you're in recovery, you're a recovered
41 years.
41 years of recovery. And the reason why I want to talk a little bit about this is because I think for some people they'd be like, wait a second, how can somebody born into this world as a mystic healer and a medicine woman become an addict so early on in their lives? Well, it flows right easily into what I'm about to say, in that that was a traumatic experience, even though it is a gift from spirit that you have been given to help heal people. Mm-hmm. To a child, seeing and feeling and smelling those things can oftentimes be very traumatic, because especially when you're being judged and other people around you and other children around you are not experiencing those same things, you become bullied, right?
Right.
And you become the victim of that. And I'm going to assume that that's one of the reasons that led you to numb out, so that you didn't have to constantly feel and see and taste other things that were not in the realm of the physicality,
right,
of the physical.
Right. But what none of us bank on when we use is that it's going to open another door. And so, there I am with all this ability to see all this stuff. And I'm high and I'm seeing even more.
Even more.
Yeah. So my using time was very short. It was like 10 years. And my drop off point of getting sober was, I died. I literally dropped to the floor and died. I saw God over me, and I'm serious. Sorry.
It's all good.
God was over me, looking me in the eyes, saying, "You're a healer. You came here to be a healer, and you're about to miss the opportunity that you have in this lifetime to do what you're meant to do, why you came here. So you either need to get it together or you're going to leave the earth early." And so I came out of it. A nurse down the street came over, brought me back to life. I ended up in San Francisco a month later in front of my first teacher, and my sobriety at that time began.
I'm getting teary-eyed right now, because when I experienced that drug overdose in Los Angeles back in 2010, and I ended up at Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital, I was out cold. Mm-hmm. And when I came to, there was a huge bright light above me. And there was this beautiful doctor, Indian descent. And she looked down into my eyes, and then she looked up to the sky. Mm-hmm. And I remember her saying these words, "Thank you, God, for saving this one." Mm. I did not believe in God at that time in my life. Mm-hmm. Of the stuff that I had experienced in my life, I did not believe in God.
Yeah.
But I too, Sonja, look back and I should be dead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I should be. But I know that Spirit was like, no. Mm-hmm. No.
Well, there's people like us, Brandon, that need to be here and share these stories, because there's people out there all day long suffering. People are suffering all over the world. And I hear it. I talk to 40 to 50 people a week, and I hear nothing but suffering. My leg hurts. My back hurts. I have, this kind of illness, this kind of disease. My husband left me. My children are not speaking to me. There is so much suffering in the world. And unless people like you and I come out and say, no, this happened, but you know what? God was there. Right. There was a higher power there, right, looking me in the eyes saying, you're fucking up and you need to get it together.
Right.
And it's like, what a wake up call. you know, and we can't, in my humble opinion, we can't have sobriety without some kind of spiritual program. I don't care what it is. If you're a Buddhist, great. If you're a Hindu, great. If you're a Muslim, great. I don't care. I feel very strongly about this because 41 years of my life, I have dedicated myself to being in service, to being here for God, for service. So I am very, every day, putting myself in prayer and in a place of saying, okay, I'm here. I am in service. Where do you need me? What do you need me to do?
I want to begin and really just kind of go in depth and talk about, and my experience in working with my shaman to help me truly heal from the childhood trauma so that I don't use again or I don't relapse again and I don't continue to abuse drugs in the way that I did before. Because this is an addiction podcast and so many people are just like, like if it's a parent, they're listening to this podcast because their child's an addict, right? And they're like, what can I do to save my child? And those types of things. And, I'm just of the belief that, trauma is the gateway to addiction. Right. And that's the reason why we numb, right? Trauma for you was hearing and seeing things that nobody else could to make you even feel like what is happening, right? And you wanted to quiet some of the noise. And so you used to numb it out. And unfortunately, it let the floodgates in. But you know what I have found interesting and just so fascinating and going back and, I'm able to, through deep breath work, get past the frontal lobe. Now I understand, even my shaman says, not everyone has that ability to just do deep breath work and drop in, is the terminology I use. Some people use ayahuasca, some people do a shroom journey, and they'll use a psychedelic in order to really just distract the frontal lobe in order to get back there and connect, right, to that inner child. But what I have done in those breath sessions is I would see almost instances on a film strip, if you will, and see moments of my childhood, things that I don't consciously remember as an adult because they were traumatic, and I've tried to bury them that deep. And what I don't think people realize is as adults, when those early formative years that you've spoken about before, right, 0 to 3, the early childhood wounding, we don't consciously remember those years. No. But as adults, we're misfiring in so many different directions, whether it's I'm choosing an abusive husband or I have a bad picker or I'm misfiring and I'm making all these because of what happened to us in those ages of 0 to 3 or even 0 to 10. And it's in order for us to heal and rewire, we must go back and reprocess that childhood trauma. And what I have been able to do is go back and find little B. That's my nickname for my inner child. Yeah. And I see little B in these instances where I was truly, Sonja, afraid. Yeah. And there were times where I was afraid living in my own home. Right. Walking on eggshells, unsure. Right. Of who I was going to get it from that day. Yeah. Was I going to get it from my sisters? Was I going to get it from my parents? There were times I felt like I was walking on eggshells and I was a scared little boy. Right. And if there's ever a time in our lives that we should have a t-shirt that says, it's all about me, it's when we're that little person. Yes. Because it is all about the child. Yes. But see, parents, and I'm always the first one in my work with clients to say, I'm not here to dump on parents. I'm not here to blame parents. Everybody comes with their karma or emotional wounds. Everybody. And so every parent in the world is struggling with their emotional wounds and what happened with grandma and grandpa. And grandma and grandpa are dealing with what happened with great grandma and grandpa. And generational trauma. Exactly. So as we're navigating that for ourselves, I think it's important to recognize our parents as people. Yes. And so often, I have people who come to me and they want to do work and go deep, but they have idealized their parents. Mommy is mommy and daddy is daddy. And even though they're 45 years old, they're still stuck in that, matrix of pedestalizing mom and dad and not seeing the dysfunction of the family and what was going on. Right. So there's sort of
a layering that you have to get through to get at that. And when I work with people and go into the inner child stuff, I always ask them to ask their child, how do you feel?
Correct.
Because we don't connect with our feelings, especially if there's that kind of dysfunction and trauma involved. And then ask the child, what do you need?
Correct.
Because the child has all these needs that were neglected.
Correct.
Yeah. So
to allow our adult self
yes.
to go back to little B, to let him know, I got you.
That's right.
And I love you.
That's right.
And I'm going to protect you.
That's right.
So that when I am triggered, I don't go into fight or flight.
That's right.
Because little B knows that I have him now.
Because
and I'm not going to abandon him.
Exactly. And you know what you've done by doing that? You've brought little B into the present moment. Yeah. And this changes all of the matrix that we live in because now we're present with that inner child.
See, I get goosebumps. See, like I literally, the hair on my arms just stands up every time I speak in that way.
Yeah.
Because it's so important. But I'll tell you this. You know, Sonja, what's been one of the most beautiful things that I've learned through shamanism and my practice of it, it has allowed me to let go of that resentment that I have held. Every child resents their parents at some point in their life. Like, I can't imagine meeting a child who's never held any resentment toward mom or dad over anything.
Right.
Like that life just doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah.
But in order to get through that, you want to know what really taught me.
What?
And this is my belief. I chose my mom. I chose my dad before my soul entered this life.
That's right.
For the lessons, good and bad, that I would be taught along the way in my early childhood so that I can heal from it, I can grow from it, and so that my soul could live its purpose. My shaman asked me a simple question. Brandon, do you love the life you have today? Yes, I love this life I have today. He says, good. Give thanks to the parents who raised you, because without them, Brandon, you would not have this life you have today.
That's right.
In truly understanding and believing that, and also understanding that trauma is generational, and that my parents, they are human. They too were once children.
Yep.
And that both of my parents experienced trauma as children.
Right.
Unfortunately, they have not healed from that childhood trauma. And because of that, passed down some of that trauma to me.
And what's so good about what you're doing and all the work that I've been doing and all the work that all the people who listen to you and that they're doing, the people who listen to me and that they're doing, is we work on this stuff internally in ourselves and we start to heal externally around us. So the more that we do the inner work, the more we start to heal our own families and our ancestral lines.
Because I hold zero hate, resentment, anything toward my parents, right?
Yeah.
None. It allows me to have a relationship with them without being hurt.
Right.
Right. And that's how we end generational trauma.
Okay, so let's talk about that because that's really important to me. We grow up in dysfunctional families.
Everybody does.
Right. And one of the biggest things that happens is we're not taught healthy boundaries. We're not taught to say, no, that feels wrong. I don't want you to touch me that way. No, I don't want you to make me do that because you're interfering with my personal space. Whatever. We're not taught healthy boundaries. And so as adults, we end up without boundaries. And then my clients call me and say, well, I don't understand why this is happening in my life. And it keeps happening over and over. And it's like, because you don't have boundaries. You're not saying no when you need to say no. And you're not saying, this is not okay for me and how I feel. And see, there it goes back to our feelings not being validated.
Correct.
We were told, quit crying, and you don't feel that way, and stop talking.
Or it's pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And our parents told us that.
Yeah, sure,
Because
they
it
did.
was taught to them.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. It's all learned behavior. So the point is that when we can start to recognize we don't have boundaries and that saying no is okay, then our world starts to change, because now we're looking at our world from a place of addiction, codependency, enabling, all of these words that really do mean something. We're living in a society right now where addiction is the number one selling point. There's clothes, there's gaming, there's alcohol, there's drugs, there's texting, sexting, pornography, you name it. There are so many addictions out there. And in my humble opinion, our society has generated a total addictive environment. So people aren't just, dealing with addiction, alcohol, drugs. They're dealing with addiction on all fronts. There are actually treatment centers in South Korea for kids who are texting and on their phones 24/7. They put them in treatment for that. Oh my God. So we really, to me, as a society, we really need to start addressing addiction. And the way to address it is to really look at the advertising and what's going on that's engaging us in all of that addictive behavior.
It is. And here's the other thing that people need to realize is that trauma will always happen. I think the most recent study that I was looking at said about 85% of youth between the ages of 0 and 10 will experience a traumatic life experience in that early stage of their lifetime.
Right.
And if that goes unhealed, they're going to misfire. They're going to eventually numb with something.
Right.
And it can be food. And
Right.
it can be gambling, and it can be sex. I just happen to choose a substance, hard substances, in order to numb.
Right.
And it's not a moral failing.
No,
It's not a moral failing.
No.
And that's what people need to also understand. But also, and this is really important, for those who have experienced early childhood trauma, I tell them this all the time. What has happened to you is not okay. What you have experienced, it's not okay. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But as an adult, it is our responsibility to heal from that trauma,
Yep.
to grow from it, so that our souls can live our life's purpose.
Right.
But oftentimes, Sonja, when people begin the healing work, they get scared.
Right.
And they don't finish it.
No.
And then they deflect. And then they're like, well, this person, they need it. They're
Blame.
acting this way. Heal this. They need this. This person, I need you to do this and I need you to do this. Where really that person goes,
Yeah.
I need it.
Yep.
Not just because I'm feeling pain here, or maybe I'm sick and I'm weak and can you heal me and fix me here? What I've learned to believe is that, because I've had I had an aura clearing done on me back in May. And my shaman tells me, he goes, Brandon, I will only do this on people I have worked with for a long time who are committed to the work.
Right.
Because Brandon, I can clear anybody. And guess what's going to happen a month or two later?
Yeah.
They're going to be right back calling me, asking me to clear them again, because they're at such a low vibration that all that energy is just attaching onto them anyway.
Right. Well, but the addiction, the drugs and the alcohol are lowering the vibration. And so a couple of things I want to say.
Please.
When I work with people, especially when I do meditation retreats, and I have what's called the Meditation Peace Project, which is every month I do a free Zoom hour meditation. I take everybody into my grounding meditation and teach them how to ground their energy rather than running energy with other people, connecting with like energy, and then spinning the karma wheel one more time. And so I'm taking people into a really deep state of inner peace, and I'm allowing and shifting everyone into a higher frequency. These are profound 1 hour free meditations that I mean, they're incredible. There's healing that takes place. So when I work with people, I'm really engaged in helping them to feel a different vibration. So where someone would go and maybe do an ayahuasca ceremony to have that experience, when they work with me and I do, say, a meditation retreat with them, I shift the energy so that we're all high. I mean, we are so freaking high.
I've experienced that.
Yeah, I won't let anyone drive. It's like, you guys aren't driving. Everybody has to stay put because we're altered. And I believe in that being such a beautiful path of people learning that they don't have to alter their energy, because even doing ayahuasca or mushrooms or pot or whatever, it's going to lower the vibration of the field. It's going to put holes in the field. And I've had people call me from Peru and say, oh, I just did an ayahuasca ceremony and I'm gone. I'm still gone. I need your help getting back. I don't know what to do. And they're gone. And I have to bring them back into their bodies. So there's so many ways that we can appreciate some of the therapeutics that are being done for post-traumatic stress, and some of these people who have dealt with, being in the military and post-traumatic stress stuff. But I am first and foremost an advocate for learning how to get high naturally, because that 41 years, I mean, I have spent all that time meditating and learning how to shift into higher frequencies. So to me, it can be done. And the part that gets difficult for people is they don't want to take the time. Mm-hmm. They don't want to sit down and meditate.
They want the quick fix.
That's right.
And they do. They want the quick fix. And when I tell people, I do. I drop in every Tuesday, 2.5 hours. Mm-hmm. It's intense.
Yep.
And it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm the happiest I've ever been.
Yeah.
I'm the most healed version. I'm not fully healed. Mm-hmm. I'm the most healed version of myself today. Mm-hmm. And it takes work. This is not I don't call my shaman. I have appointments set with him. This isn't like, hey, I'll call you in a month when I'm having. No, these are regular, already scheduled in my calendar. They do not change. That's how committed to this I am. Yep. Right? This isn't like, oh, life's getting shitty and I don't know what to do and da-da-da, I'm feeling out of here. Toby, I need a session, da-da-da. He won't do it for me.
Yeah.
He would not work that way with me. Yep. He's like, no. I only will do this. He goes, because otherwise it does not work.
Right.
He goes, you'll feel good for a couple of weeks or a month, and then you're still operating in that same way because you haven't gone back to your core wounding and you haven't done the healing necessary in order to ward that off. In one of the sessions when we were going through the chakras and we were going through all that, he asked me, he goes, what happened at age 5? He goes, a soul attached to you at age 5. Mm-hmm. That was one of them. And then the most recent soul that he said attached to me was during an interview with the mother of a son who was 15, and he died from a fentanyl overdose. It was the last TV interview I did in my career. Wow. And he looked at me and he goes, Brandon, I need to know, where did you do this interview? Mm-hmm. And I said, in her home.
Yep.
In her living room. He goes, did she show you something on that day? I said, she did. What did she show you? She showed me security cam footage, and I saw her son going up her stairs. He goes, he was in the house.
Yep.
And he goes, Brandon, what also happened during that interview? And I said, I broke down crying. It was the first TV interview where I broke down crying.
Yep.
He goes, he attached to you.
Yeah.
While you were there.
Yep.
I was so low vibration because of the stuff that was going on with my former career and my former workplace. I was at such a low place.
And you're so
wounded.
You're so empathic.
And that's I'm such an empath.
Yeah, that's what opened you up.
Yeah.
And that's why I teach the grounding meditation that is the basis of all my work.
And I'd say this because it didn't just happen to me. This is happening to other people. I'm not just like, I'm special and a soul attached to me. No, I am telling this because this is happening to people who are listening to this podcast who may not even be aware of it.
Right. Agreed. And that's why to me it's so important that we learn how to manage our energy as much as we're learning how to manage our bodies. I need to take C and D and B and zinc and all these things to have a healthy immune system. But I also need to learn that when I get triggered, when I get angry about something and that person across the room is also angry, I'm not shooting the energy from my third chakra over to them and them back to me, because all I'm doing is creating more karma with them. I've got to learn to ground that energy down into the earth, because the earth is why we're here. Our most important relationship is with her. That's why we all came here. We have been bound and connected to the goddess for infinity. And when she takes a body, like the earth is her body, even though it's blue and it's round, it's her body, we come here because we're connected to her. And we get so sidetracked. We're born each lifetime with amnesia. We don't remember where we were or what we did, or the fact that our lifetime before was living in Spain and we were arrested for being heretics and burned at the stake. All we remember is horror, shock, fear, abandonment, betrayal. And we bring that karma with us, these emotional wounds. And we're born into another life. Here we are now, living in America, male, female, and we've got all these emotional wounds that we're dealing with. Well, we've got history. We've got all these lifetimes that we have incurred different kinds of experiences. And believe me, being accused of being heretic in the 1500s and your head is on the chopping block and they're about to lop it off, nobody came up to you and said, "Excuse me, Brandon, would you like to see a therapist before we lop your head off?" No, that's not what happens. That's why we have these karmic pieces that have come with us.
I want to talk to you about karma.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I am learning is that the way we speak about people, if we speak about someone and wish them harm and they're not in our presence, it is real. And it's my belief, as what I've been taught, is that karmic curse will come back tenfold. And when we start to look at certain characters in our own personal lives and even just in life in general, it is often the people who are pointing the fingers at others that are also dealing with so much pain and suffering, because that karmic energy, that karmic cycle is just coming back. Right. And then you become more demonizing toward another person. Well, they're doing this and they're doing this and they're doing this, and I'm wishing you knew. They don't understand that karma is going to catch up with them by speaking ill and speaking hurtful of somebody else.
Yeah. So this is the way I equate karma. Karma is nothing more than unresolved emotional wounds. And each lifetime that we live, we experience emotional wounds. Those come with us like the package deal. And between the womb and 3 years old, our karma mixes in with the psychology that we inherit from our parents. So we've got abandonment, betrayal, fear, anxiety, shock, and resentment. And that comes in and mixes with mom and dad's psychology, and that becomes our package. That's what we walk through life with. And in our society, the bigger picture is we have two roles that we pretty much prescribe to and have for centuries. And that is the victim and the perpetrator. In today's world, it's the victim and the bully.
Right.
And we play these two roles out like there is no tomorrow, because we're connected to those roles karmically. And the collective karma is connected to those roles, right? So, 1400s, we're in a big battle, we're the ones that get killed, they're the winners. There you have it. We're the victims, they're the perpetrators, right? It just, whatever the modality is, it keeps repeating. And so to me, when we can look at our karma, and I take people back into their past lives, I help them to see where they've been and what they incurred. I've taken people all the way back to when they first came to Earth, to Atlantis and Lemuria, before they fell in 12,800 BC. And I help people to understand what their purpose is, why they came here, and how important she is, our connection to the planet, why we came here for her. But we're so busy being sidetracked because we've got karma. We've got an emotional package deal. I always explain the emotions that when we're born, we're handed a palette, and all the paint on the palette is emotions. And we dip our brush in and we paint our day with happiness. We paint our day with a little bit of resentment. And yeah, I'm a little angry about this. And each day we paint our world with this palette of emotions. And it's very powerful, you as a painter, me as a painter, to understand that we have the power, we have the ability to ground that energy when we're angry, to ground that energy when we're sad, and to feel the connection of this planet. We would not be here. Our electromagnetic field is dependent upon this planet. So there is such a strong source of energy if we would just tap into that.
Ah, that's so beautiful. What do you, as we begin to close here, what would be your advice to somebody who is listening right now, you know, to find that shaman, to find that spiritual healer to help connect them?
Well, of course, I have an app coming out, so I'm gonna
plug the app.
I'm gonna plug the app because I've run into a problem where, for example, I'm booked clear through the end of this year.
Right.
Next
so
year,
is my shaman, right?
Yeah, next year I'm only taking emergency appointments, and I had to find a way to reach people because so many of my regular clients wanted me even more often than, you know, talking to me once a month or twice a month, whatever. So I had the good fortune of creating an app. It's 3D. It's a really cool experience. It's called Spirit Traveler. And when you go inside, you travel with Spirit Traveler, the avatar, you go inside the pyramid. There are the 4 essential bodies: emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental. And we filmed over 60 films for this app. And you can hover on one of the bodies. Let's say it's the spiritual body. There's a menu that drops down, and you want to learn more about inner peace. You click on that, poof, I'm inside the pyramid, and I'm sitting there talking to you about inner peace. There's meditations, there's inner child work, there's all this stuff that people can do to help their mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual wellness. So that would be a way of accessing me, other shamans, other people to work with. There's a lot of people out there, but I urge and warn your listeners there are many, many wounded healers. And I deal with a lot of these people because they call me and say, you know, I've got something attached to me. Well, what? You know, you're working with people and you're not, no, I just did a weekend workshop and now I'm doing this. And, you know, it's like I'm finding in my industry, there aren't people who are really being trained. They're not with teachers who are teaching integrity and honesty and a foundation to work from that gives the work the
because I think the important thing too that I try to even tell people who are not familiar with shamanism, I'm like, listen, they're not just some psychic, all right? They're not like
exactly.
so they actually study.
Yes.
Like my shaman has gone to like he has studied from like others, you know, and who've taken him under. I mean, he's done. I mean, it's readings and books and understanding energies and understanding all these things.
God.
There is so much knowledge. These aren't people just sitting there like, yeah, I'm a shaman and I can help heal you because I can see your past and I can see your future.
Exactly.
It is not what that is.
No, it's not. And my first teacher, I kid you not, 5 days a week, we had to sit in meditation 8 hours a day. We were barely allowed to get up and go pee. I mean, we were in deep meditation 8 hours a day. I experienced things with her that's mind-blowing. I would never try to be her.
Right.
I would never try to be my second teacher or my third teacher. I have trained with people so that I have the best foundation of integrity and honesty and truthfulness that I can have, because when you dedicate your life to being in service like I have, and being 41 years sober, I take pride in that my filters are clear. I am very clear when I'm working with people. I didn't go party the night before and smoke a bunch of pot, and now I'm here to tell you how the buffalo roam.
Right.
That's not happening. But there's a lot of that going on. So I'm urging your listeners to have discernment. Be careful. I've trained people. I've got 3 wonderful healers on my website, and they could not pass go without me.
Correct.
And my ballet teacher regiment that I carry.
Listen, with any industry.
Yeah.
Any industry, there's fraudsters.
Yep.
And taking advantage of people.
Yep.
And taking advantage of people who are broken and desperate.
Yes.
There will always be people who are out there who are going to take advantage of folks. You always say that you see people in light, in colors. Mm-hmm. You do?
Yeah, I do. I see auras. I see I see all 7 layers of the auric field. Yes.
It's fascinating.
Like right now in the third.
I was just going to ask you. So when you've met me a couple of times now. Yeah. So what light is?
Your life color is emerald green, which is the color of the heart. You're totally a heart person. Yeah. You actually navigate completely by your heart.
Yeah.
Even if something catches you sort of in a hey, you just go straight from the 2nd up to the 4th. You're like, I'm in my heart on this. You've got a lot of blue in your field, especially on the 3rd layer, which is relates to the 3rd chakra. You've got yellow in the 5th layer, and the 6th layer is like this beautiful crystalline white energy. It's beautiful. The 7th is also a kind of a pale emerald green. The colors in the field will change. As we change, the chakras will be open, and then they'll fold over. If we're dealing with something, they open back up again. We've got screens that protect the chakras in the field. I work on all of this, and I think your energy is super, super clear. Like, you're really bright right now. And the vertical power current, what all the chakras hook into, like tubular flowers, your power current is like, it's not just this little tiny current going up to God and down to the earth. It's like, whoa, like this giant cable going up and coming down. So it's really good for me to see that, because that tells me that you're very anchored in being here. There's no question left in your mind that you might not want to stay. To me, you are very anchored here.
Very.
Yeah.
Very. And I wasn't that way in January 2021.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
And that's also why I tell people too, I'm happy. That's why I don't count it for me. And I know for some people it's different. That's why I don't even bother counting time anymore for me.
Yeah.
And the reason why I don't is because I'm happier since I began shamanism and really began that healing work in January 21 than I was at year 10 collecting a medallion in front of, and collecting those, counting in that time. I'm happier now because I finally did the healing work.
Right.
Because in January 2021, I wanted to end it. And to get people to understand what that was like, it's just like when you're in that state of mind, you truly don't see that there's any other options.
I know.
Like, you just don't. Like, you try to get people to understand that.
Yeah.
And they're like, but Brandon, you? And I'm like, no, you don't understand, like, what that narrow is. And you don't see anything else.
Right.
And you don't feel anything else.
Right.
But what I tell you is that, like, I'm so grateful that Spirit guided me into healing and what I needed.
Yeah.
Because, like, I look back at that version of myself in January 2021 and just always give thanks to Spirit. Thank you, because I do have so much more than I need to do here.
Yeah.
But thank you for that experience. But thank you for that darkness. And I get teary-eyed thinking about it.
I know.
But thank you for that darkness, because now I can sit there and look at somebody else.
Because now I can see the light.
Correct.
Yes.
And I can help guide somebody else to the light when they're experiencing that dark.
That's
how can I do that if I've never experienced that dark?
That's right. Exactly.
So I give thanks to that experience of that dark and ugly.
Right.
It was dark and ugly while I was going through it.
Right.
But I needed to live that experience in order for my soul to live its purpose.
Right. So one last thing I really want to share with you, because I think this is important for your listeners. A very dear friend of mine died last week, and she was in her 90s, and she was very important. I called her Auntie. She was very important in my life. And she had she has two children who are well into their adult lives, 40s. Both of them, slight Down syndrome, but very functioning, both of them. She worked her whole life to protect them, to make enough money to make sure they would be okay when she's gone. She worked like you would not believe. This woman worked so hard. And when she passed, she was really kind of befuddled, didn't know what was happening. And of course, she went up to God. And when I finally saw her, she came to me the next day, and she was standing there in my house. And I said, "It's so good to see you. You finally know where you are now." And she goes, "Yeah, I was really out of it when I went. I didn't know what was happening to me," because she didn't want to go. She was so bent on staying here. But I said to her, "What did you say, and what was the conversation you had with God?" And she said, "Funny you should ask that." She said, "God said to me, you know, you've spent your whole life trying to protect and make sure your children are going to be okay." And she said, and then God said, "But you never realized that I have them, that they're with me, that they're protected by me." And it was so profound. It was like, oh my God, to think of it on that level. And I mean, this woman was very spiritual, very Catholic, but not trusting that God had this.
Right.
And I share that with your listeners because there's those moments in our lives when we we're trying to control it, or we're trying to, like hold on to something, and we have to learn in our recovery to turn it over, to let go, to give it to God and say, "You know what? You're a better producer, director, choreographer, and everything. You handle it."
Yeah. It's a beautiful closing message. Sonja Grace, thank you very much. Thanks
you
for making the trek down here from the high country, as we like to say. And I'm excited to be out there. You'll probably see a lot more of me coming up there very soon, just because we're opening up Art of Our Soul up in Prescott, which I'm super grateful to Spirit for. So thank you. Thank you for the time and all the work that you're doing. And thank you at home for watching this episode of Escaping Rock Bottom.